This is Blake Temez with the Blake Temez podcast, where I speak as a Catholic layman to Catholic laymen about missional living, wisdom cultivation, and legacy building in service of Christ and his bride, the Church. Thanks for being here. All right, today I want to talk about something that I've learned about recently called nomothetic versus idiographic approaches in psychology. Now, what does this have to do with the topics I've been speaking about in general in regards to masculinity and the formation, the development of masculine potential within the church? Well, this approach, or rather this framework that I'm about to discuss, is useful, especially if you're working with young men as a mentor, a missionary, or a minister, in order to see different ways that you can approach your work and strike a balance between speaking to men as a population in general versus speaking to an individual man and developing his potentials in particular. Now, I came across this distinction between the nomothetic and the idiographic while listening to a podcast from Souls and Hearts by Dr. Peter Malinowski. And this set of ideas is taken from the realm of psychology. That's something I'm very interested in, something that I've spent a good deal of time reading about and writing about in different areas. But I'm still definitely, an amateur in the sense that I love learning about it and cannot claim any type of professional credentials in this realm. But in any case, the language of psychology appeals to me greatly, and I love finding out how to apply it in different settings, like the ministerial setting or the missionary setting, and something that you might be involved in your work with young men. So enough of a preface. Let's discuss the difference between the nomothetic versus the idiographic. Now, the nomothetic means an approach to research that wants to find laws and patterns and universal principles that apply to a given population or a situation. And you can find it in the name or derive the meaning from the name nomothetic, nomos meaning law in Greek. So the nomothetic approach wants to find these laws, right? Laws that help us classify people into groups, find principles that are applicable in every situation. And nomothetic work is typically done quantitatively. So that means using experiments and observations to collect objective data that, the numbers can be crunched basically, and they reveal these patterns and this information. And by the way, some of my additional research into this comes from the Simply Psychology website in an article by Saul McLeod, titled Nomothetic versus Idiographic Approaches in Psychology. So that's where some of this information is from. So nomothetic, laws, universal patterns, that type of thing. The idiographic approach, on the other hand, as you might surmise, has to do with the uniqueness of individuals using qualitative methods. So, self-reporting, conversation, and that type of thing to find out what is particular about this person sitting in front of you that makes them different from every other member of the population, right? And so you can see how the nomothetic and the idiographic are on opposite ends of this spectrum. Now, we should keep in mind that when there are opposites along a spectrum, there is often going to be a third option that synthesizes them both, taking the best of both and creating a better third, right? a more complete whole by bringing them into communication with one another. And so by bringing up the idiographic and the nomothetic, it's not to say that you need to or that you even should just pick one or the other, but that you want to find ways to integrate them. So let's bring this more directly into the realm of the mentorship or the formation of men, particularly young men. Because as I spoken about in a previous episode about generalizations, it is significant to find general principles that you can state confidently that apply in most every case, right? And so generalizations are not a bad thing. It is helpful in conversation or in preaching or in writing to be able to say, men like this, or men choose to do this, or men don't like, insert something here. That conveys a clear message. And in most cases, people recognize that the generalization is true if it's a sound generalization. So it's helpful for communication, and imagine the usefulness of that in addressing a room full of men, right? You can find something to say that appeals to them as a group based off of a similar identity and experience, rooted in their masculinity. So very helpful, right? But when we think about these pros of generalizations, we can easily think of the cons as well, right? If you have a particular young man in front of you with a question or a life situation that is posing him a problem, and you only speak to him as a man in general without any background story or any sense of his emotional state or his goals in life or anything like that, then any advice that you deliver is going to miss the mark most likely, because you'll be speaking to men instead of speaking to this man, right, in his particular circumstances. In some of my introductory episodes a while ago, I spoke to the difference between the master mindset and the emissary mindset discussed by Ian McGilchrist. And I am stretching a bit the connections between that set of ideas and this one, but they are there, because in the master mindset, you get a holistic picture. You can see universal patterns. You are collecting information from various sources. And the emissary mindset, you're hyper-focused and you're getting something done, and you're more interested in doing rather than being. And I discussed how it is significant to value both of those mindsets and incorporate them so that whatever decision making you're doing, it has the bigger picture in mind, but also you don't get paralyzed by the bigger picture and fail to ever make a decision, right? So something similar can happen in this synthesis between the idiographic and the nomothetic, where you can appreciate the big picture of generalities in regards to men, but not get stuck in the generalities and be able to make decisions, give sound advice in the particular circumstances of this man in front of you who you're mentoring and getting to know, and learning to be curious about his situation so that you can speak into it in an effective way. And so the nomothetic approach, finding universal patterns, can be gathered from considering your experiences as a man or with other men in general, and lifting principles out of that swath of experiences. It can be gained from reading good works about masculinity and its development and all of that. Significant. Very important to do, and that's something I intend to do more of so that I can get a better lay of the land of how these discussions are happening overall, big picture. And then in the Idiographic approach, that's where, trust building relationships, where you're actually investing time in, bonding activities, that both you and the other or a group of men enjoy, and building those connections so that you can begin to see, okay, this guy is unique from the rest of the group because of, he's particularly, soft spoken, or on the other hand, he's particularly, um, loud, or this guy sees his future in being in tech, or this other guy sees it being in academia, or this guy played football, or this guy ran track, or whatever it is. And the point about the Idiographic is there's no limit, right, to what you could say or how many particulars you could get into. And so in building out that part of your tools, having a good way to record those things, in a helpful and accessible way, as you develop these relationships, and giving yourselves helpful reminders so that you have a place to start from when you re-engage in a conversation, and you demonstrate a sincere interest by remembering that so-and-so's family is from Michigan, or so-and-so grew up with in a family of 6, or again, I could keep saying things, but not to get distracted. There's so many particulars you could say. So I hope that that's helpful, because in a lot of the conversations I'll be having, I'll be speaking about men in general, and I'll need to do that. But I also want to speak to certain men in particular. And I want to empower you and equip you as we continue this exploration in this space to develop your tools in both of those areas to make you the most effective minister, missionary, or mentor that you can be, so that you're bringing everything to the table when it comes to the work that you're doing. So I hope, I know that will be something for you to reflect on and think about how you can apply. So as always, thank you for your time and your attention. God bless you in all of your efforts and all the young men that you work with. Peace. If you're a young Catholic man, or a mentor, missionary, or minister who works with them, or even just a concerned figure in their life, a parent, uncle, whoever it might be on the lookout for the release of a short guide that I'm putting together called Brothers by Blood: How to Forge a New Path for Catholic Manhood. In it, I'll expand on some of the topics in this podcast and give you some points of reflection to see about how you can be a part of a movement that empowers men and brings them to their full potential for their sake, and also for the benefit of the church, and by extension, the benefit of all society. So again, thank you for being a part of this, and look out for more information about the release of my guide in episodes to come.